to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency Philemon Yang, President of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished guests, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me to begin by congratulating you, Mr. President, on your election as President of the 79th session of the United Nations Assembly, General Assembly. Please be assured of Somalia's full cooperation as you undertake the responsibilities entrusted upon you during your tenure. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank your predecessor, His Excellency Dennis France, for the successful presidency of the last session. Mr. President, this session of the General Assembly convenes amid a rising number of global challenges, from escalating transnational conflicts and humanitarian crises to the existential threats of climate change and growing economic inequalities. This resonates profoundly for our theme of this year, leaving no one behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for present and future generations. In the spirit of our unity and shared responsibility, we must confront the persistent and escalating conflicts that continue to cause immense human suffering and destabilize entire regions. Today, we are facing with crises that test our collective conscience and our commitment to peace. In Sudan, the conflict has escalated into severe humanitarian crisis, displacing millions and ravaging communities. Civilians endure indiscriminate violence and widespread gender-based assaults. We urgently call for immediate cessation of hostilities, the protection of civilians, and adherence to the international humanitarian law. It is crucial to ensure safe, unrestricted access for humanitarian aid and to foster inclusive dialogue that respects the rights and aspirations of all Sudanese people. In Gaza, the situation has reached catastrophic levels, driven by the persistent blockade and relentless cycles of violence that have created one of the most severe humanitarian disasters of our time. Despite the senseless killing of tens of thousands of men, women, and children since last October, over 2 million Palestinians are trapped in open-air prison, where access to basic goods, services, and medical care is severely restricted. Children in Gaza have particularly suffered the most, with the many enduring unimaginable trauma, malnutrition, and lack of access to education and health care. They live under constant fear as their homes, schools, and hospitals are repeatedly targeted and destroyed. The ongoing conflict has not only destroyed the physical infrastructure of Gaza, but also crushed the hopes of entire generation. The world cannot continue to turn a blind eye on this gross injustice and the continuous violations of international law by the Israeli government. We call on the international community to take immediate and decisive action to reinforce an unconditional ceasefire, to lift the inhuman blockade, and to recommit to a political process that ensures a just and lasting peace based on the two-state solution, thereby restoring the rights, dignity, and future for Palestinian people. In Ukraine, the war now in its third year has inflicted a devastating toll on civilians, destroying homes and critical infrastructure and leaving millions without essential services. The legacy of trauma and displacement will affect generations. We urgently call for an immediate cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire, and adherence to international humanitarian and human rights law, including avoiding attacks on civilians, critical infrastructure, and nuclear facilities. It is essential to open channels for dialogue and achieve the lasting political settlement. The international community must act swiftly to prevent further escalation and support efforts for peace. Mr. President, while international crises demand our attention, we must not overlook regional threats that directly challenge national sovereignty and stability. Somalia currently faces a serious threat from Ethiopia's recent actions, which flagrantly violate our territorial integrity. Ethiopia's attempts to annex parts of Somalia under the guise of securing sea access are both unlawful and unnecessary. Somali ports have always been accessible for Ethiopia's legitimate commercial activities, reflecting our commitment to regional trade and cooperation. However, Ethiopia's aggressive maneuvers, including its controversial agreement with one of our regional administration, undermines Somali sovereignty and embolden secessionist movements threatening our national unity. These actions not only sow division at the time when Somalia is striving for peace and cohesion, but also serve as propaganda for terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab, who exploit Ethiopia's provocations to recruit and radicalize vulnerable individuals. Such destabilized behavior poses a significant risk to the security and stability of the entire Horn of Africa. Somalia asserts its sovereign rights to defend its territorial integrity and calls on Ethiopia to cease its provocations and adhere to the international law. We urge the international community to stand with Somalia in condemning these violations and upholding the principles of international sovereignty and territorial integrity, which are the cornerstones of international peace and security. Regional stability depends on mutual respect for these principles, and Ethiopia must be held accountable for actions that threaten to destabilize the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, while the conflict may capture the headlines, we must not lose sight of other pressing global challenges that demand our immediate action, our immediate attention, and collective action. Somalia's experience underscores the importance of sustainable funding for peacekeeping. For over 15 years, we have hosted key African Union missions like AMISOM and ATMIS, which have been critical in countering Al-Shabaab and supporting state building. As a new mission, AUSM takes over with a focus of counterterrorism and capacity building. Its success depends on reliable funding. Peacekeeping is about creating lasting stability, not just maintaining peace, and we urge the international community to support innovative funding solutions to ensure these missions fulfill their vital roles. Mr. President, climate change is a global crisis that touches every life and every community, but nowhere is its impact more deeply felt than in vulnerable nations like Somalia. We endure relentless droughts, devastating floods, and rising temperatures that tear apart our communities and threatening our very survival. While the recent COP28 conference made important strides with the creation of a loss and damage fund and the commitment is to expand renewable energy, there remains a significant challenge accessing these funds. For many developing countries, the reality is that complex bureaucracy, rigid criteria, and lack of necessary resources often stand in the way they receive the help they so desperately need. It is not just about making promises, it is about ensuring that those promises can reach the people who need them most. We call on the global community to simplify access to these crucial funds so that countries like Somalia can build resilience, protect our people, and secure the future where everyone has the chance to thrive. Mr. President, reforming the United Nations Security Council is essential to ensure it reflects today's geopolitical realities. The current structure no longer adequately represents the voices and concerns of world nations, particularly those in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We support the Zilwini Consensus, which calls for a more representative and inclusive council. This reform is necessary to enhance the UN's credibility and effectiveness in addressing the full spectrum of global challenges, from peace and security to development and human rights. Reforming international financial institutions is also crucial to building a fairer global economy promotes inclusive growth and sustainable development. The existing international financial system is heavily skewed in favor of a view, perpetuating inequalities and restricting the ability of developing nations to thrive. We call for reforms that make these institutions more accountable, transparent, and responsive to the needs of the world's poorest and the most vulnerable. Mr. President, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is not an ambitious, it is a necessary. With only it is a necessity. With only 6 years left, the world is far behind on our collective promise to end poverty, protect our planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for all by 2030. We must urgently renew our commitment by increasing funding, creating innovative partnerships, and focusing on reaching the most vulnerable. As Somalia takes its seat on the UN Security Council, we stand ready to work with all nations to address these challenges, strengthen cooperation, and promote multilateralism, and build a world where no one is left behind. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Somalia has come a long way on its journey toward stability and development. This past year has been particularly significant, marked by critical milestones that signal Somalia's rising trajectory. We have successfully completed the debt relief process, allowing us to reclaim our economic sovereignty and integrate into a global financial system. Additionally, Somalia's accession to the East African community marks a new era of regional integration, trade, and cooperation. We have also made a historic stride in lifting a long-standing arms embargo, a step that will further enable us to safeguard our sovereignty and security. Security is fundamental to development, and Somalia has prioritized to prioritize the fight against terrorism with remarkable success. In the past 2 years, our national security forces have reclaimed more than 2/3 of the territory that was once under the control of a Shabab terrorist group, significantly diminishing their operational capability. Mr. President, with marked progress in governance, democratization, and political stability, Somalia stands on the brink of significant economic growth, with vast and untapped resources and strategic location along major maritime trade routes. Our arable land offers great potential for agricultural protection, and our livestock sector is already among the strongest globally. We also have one of Africa's highest potentials for renewable energy, particularly on onshore wind power. And our extensive coastline provides rich opportunity for sustainable fishing and other sectors of blue economy. To capitalize on these assets, we are drafting a national transformation plan that outlines our vision for leveraging our resources to achieve stability, self-reliance, and prosperity. And we welcome international investment and cooperation to help us realize this potential, integrate into the global economy, and contribute to regional peace and stability through strong partnerships. Mr. President, as we look ahead, Somalia is determined to be defined not by the hardships of its past, but by the possibilities of its future. Let us act now to build a future where every nation, every community, and every person can thrive in dignity and peace. I thank you for your attention.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the Federal Republic of Somalia.